Every great highway has its obstacle. For the Dixie Highway, that bold promise of a road from Chicago to Miami, that obstacle was named Monteagle, a wall of stone on Tennessee's Cumberland Plateau, too steep for wagons and too rough for the first automobiles, and almost too deadly for the trucks that came later. The grade dropped more than 1,000 feet in just a handful of miles, twisting through fog and hairpin curves. They called it the last link when the highway was being built. Later, they called it the killer grade. To conquer Monteagle was to claim the open road. To fail was to become a part of the mountain's legend.
So today I've got on my hat and I've got my cup of coffee, because I'm going to tell you a tale that was told to me by my father-in-law, a professional truck driver. Today we talk about the most white-knuckled experience on the Dixie Highway, Monteagle, as we go beyond the exit. And Troy, this one's for you.
Before the automobile. Long before truckers white-knuckled their way down Monteagle, this mountain was already a barrier. In the early 1800s, stagecoaches and wagons struggled across the Cumberland Plateau. The clay turned to axle-deep mud when it rained, and in the dry season, the ruts were so deep they usually snapped wheels. Horses strained and wagons broke down in this area, and travelers dreaded the climb. The railroads eventually chose an easier path through other valleys, bypassing Monteagle entirely. It remained pretty much a quiet mountain, too steep for commerce and too remote for progress. Then came a man named R.M. Payne. At the dawn of the 20th century, Payne had a dream tucked into the Pelham Valley below Monteagle. He owned a limestone cavern called the Wonder Cave, and he believed tourists would come if only they could reach it. The problem was simple. There was no real road to the top. So in 1903, he built one. Payne blasted a crude toll road up Monteagle, built mainly for wagons and buggies, as there were only about 8,000 registered cars in the U.S. at the time, but there were a few that came through. He charged a toll that was a whopping $1 back in that time period, which was about a full day's pay back then for folks working in factories, nearly $40 today. The road was narrow, twisting, and barely more than a lane in places. Hairpin turns clung to the escarpment's edge. It was steep, but it proved the mountain could be climbed, and it worked. Early travelers brave enough to try finally had a way to reach the summit. Payne's Monteagle and Pelham Turnpike wasn't just a tourist gamble. It became a foundation, because when the Dixie Highway Association was formed in 1915, and the dream of a north-south auto trail took shape, Monteagle suddenly found itself on the map. The Dixie Highway's rocky threshold. By 1915, the automobile wasn't just a novelty anymore. Families were buying Fords. Adventurers were pushing the limits of where a car could go. And boosters across the country were dreaming up long-distance highways to carry them. One of the boldest ideas was the Dixie Highway, a connected route from Chicago to Miami, which would stitch the Midwest to the Deep South. The promise was simple: climb in your car in Detroit or Chicago and drive yourself straight into the land of sunshine and orange groves. But there was a problem. Tennessee, the Cumberland Plateau, which was steep and rocky and very unforgiving, stood in the way. If the Dixie Highway was going to happen, it had to cross, and most likely that crossing would be at Monteagle. Grundy County, where it sits, made its pitch. R.M. Payne actually offered to donate his toll road if the highway could climb from Pelham, pass Wonder Cave, and continue over the top of the mountain through Tracy City. It would put his county and its cave on the national map. But politics had their own plan. At the association's 1915 meeting, the official western division of the Dixie Highway was set, south from Nashville through Winchester and up past Sewanee, cresting the plateau at Monteagle before dropping toward Chattanooga. Grundy County was mostly bypassed except for a very small corner at the top. R.M. Payne's dream wasn't chosen for the main line. His toll road was bypassed by the official Dixie route, but it didn't vanish. For years, tourists still climbed his rocky switchbacks to reach the Wonder Cave, and his gamble to carve a road into the escarpment proved one thing: Monteagle could be conquered, and that way Payne's Turnpike paved the way, literally, for what was to come. By 1916, construction had reached the mountain from both sides, but a 5.5-mile gap across the summit still stood unfinished. It even threatened the entire project. If Monteagle couldn't be conquered, the highway might be rerouted altogether. You see, at this point in time, government did not become involved in making roads of this type. There were no federal nor state funds set aside for this, and the Highway Association, while great at promoting, did very little to provide monies to build the project. And with very little county money to spare, progress stalled. Well, that is until the community picked up the tools themselves. Merchants, farmers, and even church groups, they turned out to what they called good road days, bringing wagons, tools, and their own labor to push work forward. Women's auxiliaries set up tables and served dinner on the grounds for the crews. Gravel was hauled and work was done, and the last link of the Dixie Highway began to take shape. By the early 1920s, the road across the mountain was finally opened. Designated as a part of State Route 2, the Dixie Highway was whole at last, and perched right at the center of it all was Monteagle. No longer just a mountain barrier, but now the gateway between Nashville and Chattanooga. And it wasn't just the highway that took root here. At the summit, the town of Monteagle grew into a crossroads community. Gas stations, motor courts, and small diners waiting for travelers who had just survived the climb. That isn't to say, though, that this mountain and its road were without troubles. The white-knuckled grade. Once the road over Monteagle finally opened, the real test began. Drivers quickly discovered this was no ordinary highway. The descent dropped more than 1,100 feet in just 4 miles, with a grade that hit 6% and curves that felt more like switchbacks than turns. For early motorists, it was terrifying. Narrow tires, primitive brakes, and switchback curves made every descent a gamble. But by the late 1930s and 40s, the road had taken on an even bigger role. With the enactment of the U.S. numbered highway system in 1926, the Dixie Highway over the top of Monteagle had taken on a new badge, US 41, a main artery from the Midwest to Florida, and that introduced something that had not been seen much as of yet: heavy trucks. They were now grinding their ways through the hills of Tennessee. This is when the mountain truly earned its reputation. Truckers gave it nicknames like Deadman's Ride or simply the Grade. It wasn't uncommon for drivers to pull over to take a good look at their vehicles and maybe say a silent prayer before they started down the mountain. With the automotive technology of the day and heavier loads, runaway trucks were not that uncommon. And Monteagle gained its reputation as one of the most dangerous stretches of road anywhere in America. Pop culture and Prohibition. Monteagle's reputation wasn't built on danger alone. Like any place that much fear is attached, it also attracted a lot of tall tales and stories, some of them true and some of them not so much. During Prohibition, Monteagle's isolation made it a convenient hideout for the famous or infamous gangster Al Capone. Locals say he stayed in the stone mansion near the summit, today known as High Point Restaurant. Back then it was known as the Maybe Gibson House. The legends up there talk about a lot of hidden tunnels, speakeasy gatherings, and a house full of secrets. One story even tells of a Monteagle farmer pulling a luxury car out of a snowy ditch with a team of oxen. The grateful passenger reached in, handed him a cigar, and said, "My name's Al Capone. Call on me anytime." For a long time there was a lot of debate on this fact. But in 1997, a historic registry report uncovered old photos of what appeared to be Capone's car being towed up the mountain, which means maybe it wasn't just a tall tale after all. Monteagle also slipped into popular culture in ways only a legendary road can. In 1978, Jerry Reed wrote the legend for the movie Smokey and the Bandit, capturing the breakneck fear of a rig flying down Monteagle's grade. In 1990, Johnny Cash sang about the mountain itself, channeling the voice of a trucker gripping the wheel and praying the devil won't take his soul. Way before the days of internet forums, truckers used to swap Monteagle stories, especially over the CBs. My own father-in-law, Troy Evans, a professional driver for nearly 40 years, first told me about a near mistake he made on that mountain. You see, on a hot evening in the late 70s, he was in a rush to get just past Atlanta. The truck he was driving had been having a little bit of struggle, but it was doing okay, and there was no time to waste. Even then, it was pretty common to pull over and check your vehicle out very well before making the descent. However, with the time crunch, he felt that he couldn't afford to lose the ground. A short time into the trip down the mountain, a horrible vibration began in the front of the truck. That, and the telltale smell of something burning. Many times that night he prayed to Jesus to get him down off of that mountain. My father-in-law learned 3 valuable things that night. 1. Never risk missing a safety check before going down this hill. Number 2, he knew God was listening to him and heard his prayers. And number 3, he learned a healthy respect for the mountain called Monteagle. By the 1960s, Monteagle's reputation wasn't just folklore anymore. It was a problem. Truckers dreaded it. Families feared it. And Tennessee's highway engineers knew something had to change. The answer was the Interstate highway system. Interstate 24 was planned as the modern artery between Nashville and Chattanooga, but instead of bypassing Monteagle, the engineers decided to confront the mountain head-on. On paper, the grade didn't look impossible. It was about 6% over 4 miles, dropping more than 1,100 feet. But in practice, the descent was brutal. On the old US 41 alignment, lanes were narrow and curves were tight, and the pavement was often slick with fog and ice, leading to jackknife sliding trucks and a lot of catastrophic accidents. In the eastbound side alone in 1983, 54 accidents were recorded in a single year. So when I-24 was built in the 1960s, the westbound lanes got a brand new 4-lane divided highway, designed with broader curves and longer grades. But eastbound traffic, the dangerous descent still relied on the old US 41 alignment. For a few years, Monteagle was one of the only places in America where an interstate split across 2 generations of road design, modern lanes on one side and twisting relic on the other. And the wrecks didn't stop. By the mid-80s, Tennessee launched one of the most ambitious safety projects in highway history. Between 1985 and 1989, they completely rebuilt the eastbound descent. They straightened the worst of the curves and reduced the steepest grades with blasting. There was widening of the lanes and adding broader shoulders. They installed runaway truck ramps more frequently. They built emergency pull-offs so trucks could cool brakes and give drivers a fighting chance to pause, adjust, and let the smoking vehicle recover before tackling the rest of the grade. And finally, a truck inspection station at the summit was added. The results were dramatic. Accidents dropped from 54 in 1983 to just 3 in 1991. What had once been one of the deadliest stretches of road in America was suddenly one of the most studied examples of engineering triumph. Still, Monteagle never seemed to lose its edge. Signs continued to warn of the 6% grade over the 4-mile stretch. Truckers still tense their shoulders at the summit, even with the modern lanes and safety ramps. The mountain hasn't forgotten its past, and in the end, the only way to beat Monteagle was to adapt it. Monteagle's legacy and a look back. Today, Monteagle isn't the terror it once was. Most drivers on Interstate 24 cruise across the summit without a second thought. Modern trucks have stronger brakes, cars handle a lot better, and the lanes are wider, straighter, and safer than ever before. But underneath that smooth pavement lies a story, hiding in plain sight. A story of a struggle between people and a mountain that refused to be ignored. Monteagle began as a barrier, a place where stagecoaches got bogged down and wagons snapped their axles. It became the last great link of the Dixie Highway, with the final stretches built by the hands of local farmers, families, and communities who refused to be cut off. Literally shaking loose the weak engines of the early automobiles, burning the brakes and bearings of the mid-century semis, and earning the nicknames the Grade or Deadman's Ride. It even seeped into the culture, songs, legends, and of course the gangster tales as well, all tied to the idea that Monteagle was more than just a road. And while the interstate finally tamed its most dangerous curves, its memory lingers. The old US 41 alignment still exists, winding quietly through the hills, alongside the modern lanes. But no screaming brakes and no roaring trucks today, just the echo of what once was. And maybe that's Monteagle's real legacy. It didn't just shape the Dixie Highway, it shaped the way we build, drive, and remember the roads that connect us.
I really hope you enjoyed our story about the Dixie Highway and Monteagle, one of the craziest spots in the entire highway. Maybe you got your own Monteagle story you'd like to tell us. If so, please drop it in the comments down below. And be looking for some more Dixie Highway videos. We've had a lot of requests, and we're welcoming more of them too. Well, maybe you'd like to be a part of what we do here too. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the history of two-lane America and exploring roads that are hiding in plain sight, why don't you go ahead and subscribe to the channel? We'd love to have you as a part of our caravan. As always, we really appreciate you being here. Thank you for watching, and God bless.